Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. My name is Amy Chow. I am the Training and Product Manager at Casio in Casio's Education Division. For the sake of just audio or video quality of the webinar, we're going to keep everyone muted and have all our video cameras off. As we mentioned earlier, for those of you that were on, if you have a question, you can ask through the chat panel. You can just ask everyone, and I'll do my best to answer questions as we go through, but if there's something that I'm getting a lot of, I'll stop Karen, who is presenting tonight for us, and ask her. So before we do that, it's probably a good time for you to pull that open. As Karen said, we are going to take a look at basic statistics functionality with Classpad.net tonight. And Karen, if you'll go to the next slide.
I'm trying. Oh dear. I'm working on there we go. Woo!
There we
I'm working on a different computer setup, so I'm excuse me if I'm a little late.
So as I mentioned, I am Amy Chow. I'm moderating tonight. I've been in education for the last 14 years, having taught high school, and currently work as the Training and Product Manager in Casio's Education Division. My primary responsibilities, as you can see on the screen, are coordinating workshops for schools, districts, and conferences, and then also working with our development team on updates and improvements for products. And Dr. Karen Greenhouse is presenting for us, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello there. So I am Karen, and you can read my blurb there, but this is my 31st year of teaching, which is frightening to think about. I've taught middle school, high school, college now. And I work with school districts on technology integration standards. So I'm excited to share tonight, especially for those of you who have not seen Classpad.net, some of the statistics abilities. So what I'm going to do, I just want to explain how tonight's going to work. I'm going to be sharing some of the activities we're going to kind of do together. We're going to collect some data, and you're going to see how easy it is to make graphs and connections and stuff like that. And then I'm also going to be sharing some already created activities, and I'm going to throw them into the chat panel if you'd like to try to play along. You don't have to. You can just watch. Everything's being recorded. We'll put this up by tomorrow. But at the end of the webinar, I'm also going to share a PDF that has all of the activities that I'm looking at in the webinar, plus some extra ones that I threw in there, knowing I probably would run out of time, as I usually do. So you're going to get an entire activity sheet that has all the links to the ready-to-use activities that we're going to be doing. So don't panic if you don't get everything as we're doing the webinar, because you're going to get it in a follow-up email. You'll get it at the end of the webinar, and then we also record everything. So I'm going to kind of switch my screen out here, I hope. All right, why isn't it working? Ignore that. There we go. All right. All right, so I'm going to the website. For those of you that got on early, I suggested that you go to the website. So this is the website. This is a free web-based dynamic math software. And
Karen, your screen hasn't switched yet.
Oh, it hasn't switched. That's weird. Let's try it again. Sorry. Working in a strange environment. And where is, oh, there it is. That's interesting. All right, let me know if it shares. Are we good now?
Yes, we're good now.
Okay. Whew. All right, so this is Classpad.net. It's just a web-based dynamic math software. And you don't have to have an account, but having an account is what you kind of want to do, because anything that you do, you can save if you have an account. But we're just going to go in, start exploring. So those of you who want to kind of play along with me, all you have to do is hit the Start Exploring button, and it opens up the paper. So Classpad.net is based on this idea of paper that you can create and move things around the way you want. And you'll see this little message here that says create a sticky note. And what does that mean? Well, think Post-its. So when I click anywhere on the screen, as it's telling me to do, I can decide what kind of math I want to do. So I can do calculations, graphs, geometry, data, sequences. This is financial, that's pops up when you actually have an account, and then text. So we're going to be looking, and you're going to see all of these things, but we're going to start, this is a statistics activity. I'm just going to show you how easy it is to just start collecting data and making some statistical things. So all I did was click, let me do that again. I clicked this data icon that you see, and it creates a table. That easy. So we're going to collect some data from you right now. So if you were working in an online environment and you're working with students in a Zoom meeting just like we are, you can simply have them send you data and you can collect it, and they could even be doing it on their own. So I'm going to ask each of you, well, we're not going to collect all of you, we're going to just do a couple. I want to know how many pets everyone has. So if you can throw that into the chat panel, which I hope I can find again. Amy, you might have to read these because I can't find my chat.
Okay, no problem.
Where my
We
chat?
have a, you want to start collecting data?
Yeah.
We've got a few. All right, so we have 2, 0, 1, 1.
Oops. So all I'm doing, it's very easy. I'm using my keyboard to just enter the numbers, and then I hit enter and it goes down to the next line. So give me a couple more, Amy.
0.
Wow.
We'll say 2.
Let's try to go up to 10.
All right. We're waiting on a few more people to give us their numbers.
How many
you guys
pets?
will chat, yeah, put in the chat panel how many pets you guys have. I'll read it out to Karen.
I have 0 now. I lost one, so.
Oh. Just need, what?
Maybe.
3?
No, this is fine. We'll just start with this.
Okay.
Not very exciting data, sorry. We could pretend, let's say we had someone with 3. I have my neighbor next door has 3 cats.
There you go.
We'll throw my neighbor in there just to get a different number. So I have some data, and if you're working with students, and we tend to want them to, you know, collect and calculate the mean, the average, the mode, all that stuff. So you could do all of this by hand. So I've collected my data in a table, and now I can click somewhere and pull up the calculator sticky. So notice we're calling these stickies because they stick and move wherever you want them to. So you can basically arrange your paper however you want. So I have a calculation, I have my table that's next to it. So one thing I could do to do calculations is I could just do it by hand. So I could have the students, and notice when I start in the calculate sticky that this keyboard comes up. So this is nice. You can use this on touch screens because it has the keyboard. I tend to use my computers, my laptop's keyboard, but I could do either. And notice in the keyboard here, you have a lot of templates. So like you've got the math templates here, and if I go to the next tab, there's some more. So lots of things you can do. And I just want to point out some of these looked grayed out, and that's because I'm just using this as a guest. I'm not in my official account at this point. And so some things are blocked out until you sign up for your free account. And accounts are completely free, and you then get a lot of things that pop up that are kind of grayed out right now just as a guest. So one thing I could do, as you would expect, I could just start, you know, adding up the numbers. Obviously, there's not too much to add here. I'm not putting the zeros in. So I could add that, and then how many did I get? 8. So then I could do a, you know, so the mean average is 1.125 pets, which makes no sense, right? You can't have 0.125 of a pet unless maybe they're missing a leg or something. So you could do things by hand, but what I want to show you is how you can also use the functions built into this program. So let's say I wanted to just use the words mean, and notice that this column, I gave it a name, pet. And the great thing about Classpad.net is that everything is connected. So even though I did something in a table and now I'm in a calculation, they are connected, talking to each other. So notice when I typed in the word mean, this is a function, and it's telling me to put something in here. So I'm going to put the name of my list. Well, the name of my list is up here, and I'm going to put pet. And now it's going to give me the mean quickly without having to do the calculation. So you can decide what is it you want, what's your goal for your students? Is your goal for them to actually have to do it by hand, or is it to compare the mean, the mode, and the median and get some information from that. So you want to get to those calculations quickly. So we could continue to do that. And notice the minute I start typing, so I put in an M, it gives me some options that I might be thinking of. And if I put in MO, then here's the different things. So I want to type in the word mode and pet. So I can use this name up here, it's a multi-character variable if you think about it that way, to help me find the mode. And now there is no mode. Well, actually there is a mode. The mode is 0. Most people have no pets according to our data from collected here. Another thing that's really nice is if they were doing it by hand, what would we ask them to do when they're trying to find the mode? We want them to sort it in ascending order, right? You can also have this because of the connection, and let's move our table down here a little bit. I could do sort, and notice how my options are sort A and sort D. So that means sort the numbers ascending or sort the numbers descending. So we want to do A. And again, we're using that name that we gave it. And now it's going to take it and take this list and sort it in order ascending. So now I could actually see where this mode came from because I can quickly see that, oh yeah, we have the most zeros. There's 3 zeros compared to the other ones, right? And then now because it's sorted, I could actually look at what's the median. So I have 8 numbers. The median is exactly between this one and this one. So therefore my median is 1. I could then test it by typing in the word and verifying that what I thought was the median is the median. So this is just kind of showing you simple ways to get to the calculations. Now we're going to look at some graphs that could come from this. Now notice I only have one variable. I have pets. We're going to get into different activities in a little bit where I have more information, more data. But right now we're just working with one. So I'm doing all these manual or the one variable statistics using the function. I could also do, if I click on the table itself, this is now the statistics. So I'm in statistics. So I want you to notice what happens. So the table controls statistics. And the minute you select one of the columns in your table, the statistics options come up. So what are the things you can do with statistics? You can do calculations. So notice you can do one variable and two variable. So let's just do one variable since we're here. When I click it, notice I get another little sticky. And here's all my one variable statistics. So your quartiles, your median, your max, your min, all of those different things, standard deviations, those types of things, they all come up here. And so that was just simply selecting the column and choosing that calculation option. I'm just going to kind of mention the other things that you can do here. We're going to not do all of them. We're not going to be looking at the tests and distributions and the inverse distributions. That's advanced statistics. We're doing more basic stuff, but those are options here. But you can do regressions. We are going to do a couple regressions, at least one, in our activities. So there's regressions, there's, I'll just let you see the test. They're all grayed out because I'm in as just a guest. I don't have a user. This opens up as a user, a signed in account. Intervals, again, all grayed out, but they're there. So my AP stats teachers, you have a lot of options. We're going to go into graph right now. So one variable statistics, what graph might be interesting. If you're working with younger kids, they usually start with a dot plot, right? So let's look what a dot plot looks like. So what I want to point out here is each thing that pops up is its own separate sticky. So connected, they are connected to each other. So I don't know if you can see these, but there's these little, I call them spider webs, kind of spiders that kind of show you where everything's coming from. So this dot plot is coming from the variables in this table, and this one variable information is also coming from that table. So that's what these little spider webs are kind of indicating. So here's my dot plot, and I could change the scale. So now this is actually a graph, and I could actually do a couple things in it. I could change the scale if I wanted to, turn off the grid, but if I just wanted to see, so maybe I don't want to see the grid, and I just want to see the dots. So there's my dot plot. So now I can easily see that, yes, my 0 has more than the others. So what are some other statistical plots that I could do with one variable, just to show you how easy it is to get some quick comparisons. So a dot plot's nice. It kind of shows you, which one has the most, right? So if we went into, say, a histogram kind of similar to the dot plot, right? So now we're using bars, and notice that you get a different color. And down here, let's move our graph a little bit. The histogram is telling me my data is coming from the pet frequency, and it's telling me how it's stepping, how wide the bars are. So I could change the, the width of these if it makes more sense. Maybe I want them to be 0.5. And so you can change how it looks. A true histogram would actually be connected, right? So there's another version. And if you click on the histogram, it tells you how many are in that bar of the histogram, how many at that number. And then let's do one more plot that makes sense for a one variable. So let's do a box and whisker. So notice what happens. All the graphs or the plots are all on the same grid here. They're all on the same graph. And that's nice. I always like that because you can look at it and ask students, which plot is giving you the most information? Like, what do we care about? So obviously the dot plots and the histogram are telling us which one has the most. That's very visual, easy to see which number of pets. So 0 has the most. So more people have no pets than have, 4 pets or 3 pets, whatever it was. But what's the box plot showing us? So the box plot's showing us different things. So you could be asking students, which one of these graphs do you think best represents the data? And it's sort of, what is it you're trying to find out about the data? So you can have them all in one place, but the neat thing about Classpad, and notice I'm moving things around, is each graph, so notice each graph gets its own little separate tab, and they match over here. They tell you where they come from. I can actually separate them. Let's say the students say, well, I think the box plot. So they could grab that tab and pull that graph apart. And now what happens is everything associated with that graph gets pulled out. So now I have, whoops, oh, I just put it back together. Sorry about that. Let me try that again. It's this drop and drag. I was trying to get them so they're separated. So now I have a table, the box and whisker plot separate. And so I can look at it individually by itself instead of all the graphs on top. So lots of ways you can think about just doing basic statistics. Very easy elementary type of exploration. So this was all done in just not in an account. I was not in my account at all. And so I could do all of this work. So if you're working with students, they don't have to have an account. You can actually just have them start exploring right away. But if they do all this great work and you do all this great work and you want to save it, then you do definitely need an account because it doesn't know where to put it if it doesn't have an account. And accounts are free and you can play and free and create all your papers. So for those of you who don't have an account, don't do it now because it'll take some time, but just to log in, I've lost my mouse. There it is. But if you're here and you decide, oh my gosh, I would love to have an account. If you go to log in, here's where you can register for an account if you don't already have one. So I do highly recommend getting one because anything I share, you can save into your own account and have it and modify it, those types of things. What I'd like to do next is to actually go into a ready to use activity and show you a different way to think about statistics. So I'm in this activity that we were just doing here, this exploration, I was actually using the statistics menu, right? So the statistics menu is the data, and when you click it, you can make graphs and do all of the statistics very quickly. But when you're first working with students, maybe you want them doing things by hand, plotting their own points, making circle graphs, those types of things. So this activity, whoops, and I'm gonna share this with you right now in the, oh shoot, I don't know where my chat panel went. I'm trying to find it because I wanted to share this activity with you all.
Might have to open it up again.
So this is an activity, sorry. Yeah, but see, it's, okay, so I apologize. I cannot find my chat panel. It's literally gone. Oh, there, all right. All right, so I'm gonna put, I found it. I'm gonna copy the URL. So when you work in this activity in Classpad.net and you create something, so I created these accounts. It's not letting me copy it. And I've sent this activity to you in the chat panel if you would like to play along or just look at it, on your own paper. There we go. So this activity is something I created. And when you create an account, so you have to have an account to create something and save it and share it. So I created it and I shared it, and every activity gets its own unique URL. So if you look up here at the top and what I've shared in the chat panel, this is the URL attached to this paper, and this is what I would send to students in an email or on my classroom or in my website, however it is you decide to work with your students, and then they can all open it and work on the activity. So this activity, I'm not going to do the whole activity. This activity,
Karen,
yeah.
I don't think you got it sent out to everyone. So can you check
Oh,
your
I
chat
did. I only
panel?
sent it to, I don't know why I only sent it to him. I sent it to one person. Everyone, there we go.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so this activity, I wanted to pull this up just to show you a couple features that are kind of cool about Classpad. Not that I'm gonna show you how to do this. Next week's webinar is actually on how to insert images and stuff like this. But this activity, you'll notice that you can insert like little animations in. So this activity is about candy and counting M&Ms. When I was teaching in middle and high school, one of my favorite activities to do was to get candy, and you count the M&Ms. If you guys have been teaching, you've probably done the same activity, where you count and you you make a guess at how many of each color are in the bag and how many total are in the bag. So that's a really fun activity. So that's what this activity is about, is get your own M&Ms or your Skittles or your jelly beans and count them, and it's talking about how they're packed by machines, and so there's a percentage put into the machine of how many should be in each bag, and does that actually happen? That's sort of what we're exploring here. So you'll notice that this activity starts with students collecting their own data if they have it, but if they don't, if you scroll down, there is sample data already there for them. So this sample data they could then use to find all of their statistics and stuff. Now, I'm not going to go through this because it's very similar to what we just did. I'm actually going to scroll down to the rest of this. So this activity is actually done on the geometry sticky, and I'm going to show you that. And I know that because when I click on this sticky, so this is a sticky, it looks very much like the graph sticky because I turned the grid on, but this is actually the geometry sticky. And the reason it's done in the geometry sticky is because the geometry sticky allows you to do these cool little hide show buttons. And so this data is there we go. So there is a dot plot that was plotted using geometry points. So we just plotted them, I changed the color, and it's showing the color of each grid based on this sample data. And so students are being asked to do the same thing with their own data if they could collect it. But if they couldn't collect it, they could see already done data. So a couple different options here, but using the geometry sticky instead of the statistics. And then I'm going to show you the other hide show. So the bar graphs were done when you first are teaching with students like elementary, middle, you have them construct their own bar graphs and histographs and stuff like that. So you can do that with Classpad.net by using the geometry sticky. So that's what I wanted to show you here, is you don't have to, oh, I think I messed something up here. Uh-oh. I'm not sure what just happened there. Let's reset. So when all else fails, redo. So all I did was reset, and it's just going to bring back. And since I didn't save my work, it's just going to come back as a what's the word I'm using? It's going to come back as the original as it was, if it comes back at all. All right, I don't know what's happening here. All right, hopefully that'll turn on. Oh, there we go. It's a little slow. So I wanted to show you the histogram. So again, the whole point that I'm doing here is you can do the statistics either by hand using the geometry, or you can do them using the statisticals, but it sort of depends on the learning goal that you have for your students. If you're just teaching them about dot plots and bar graphs, constructing by hand might be where you want to go, and that's where you can use the geometry tool. So that's what this is. And if you notice down here, we can also do ratios and percents. And so I wanted to show you how, what am I trying to do here? Oh, sorry, it's being really finicky here. The students are going to calculate their own percentages, and so this is using the sample data percentages, and then they make their own circle graph based on their percentages. So I'm using the percentages from the sample data, and they're going to then use their own data, and they can move this. So this is, again, notice this is the geometry. I made a circle with different radii and measured the angles, and now they just have to manipulate this, and so they can see what a circle graph looks like. So this activity is definitely kind of just introducing how to make your own statistical plots instead of letting the calculator do it. Just another option, another way to think about it. So there's lots of exploration. What do the points mean? Explain which graph might be the best one for the data that you have. So there's a lot of that type of activity. So this is very much more of a creating from scratch. So just an option depending on what your learning goals are. Are there any questions before I move on? And again, I'm just sharing activities. I'm not going to do all the activities. I want to just show you your different options that you can do with Classpad.net, because there's so many different ways to approach all of these.
No, I don't see any questions so far.
All right. So I'm going to move on to this next activity, which looks like the same activity as the one I just did.
Just a quick reminder, everyone, if you have a question, put it in the chat panel so that you can send it to either just me or send it to everyone so that we can answer the questions that way.
Okay. Oh, no. All right, so I'm sending you another activity, and it does look very much like the one that we just did, and I don't know what is happening here. I apologize, my computer is just going crazy.
Karen, I think that was the exact same activity.
No, it's not. It looks similar, but it is different. It's just being really slow. So it does look like the same activity because it does start out similar, but this is more about how does changing something in your measures, in your data, impact the plot and impact the measures of center. So that's what this one's about. So it is very similar, but it has the statistics, and basically this one is different because it's collecting. So we've collected over here 20 different bags, same size, and so they could go collect their own if you're going to do it with your whole class, or use the sample data. So you'll see the sample data, and if you're wondering why the sample data is kind of grayed out, one of the things you can do when you're making activities, I'm going to highlight that column, is to lock the data so that students can't change it. So when I created this activity, I didn't want them to change my data. I wanted them to add their own data in a different column if they wanted to, but my data would at least stay consistent. So this is the total number of M&Ms in a bag. And it's about, you know, each bag is 1.69 ounces. Do they have the same number of M&Ms? And that's what they're going on this. And so the first thing they're asked to do using this data is to get their one variable statistics. And so we want them to use this statistics capabilities here. So here's their one variable statistics, and the average is 53, or the mean, and so they can see all of this, and then they're going to, and then they can compare if they did their own data. And then they're going to actually make several different, and I'm going to skip this, but they're going to make several different, plots and determine which one they think is the best one for that information. So again, all I have to do to make the plots is select the column and choose which type of graph I want. So maybe I want a box and whisker. And so we can see what that looks like. It's very easy to see. And if you click the graph, it shows you the 5-number summary, right? So there's my min and my max, and there's my, my median right there. All of those numbers that are in that. And then they could do another one, is that the best plot? Maybe we want to look at a histogram and see if that's a better representation. So what I really wanted to do is to come down here, and so this is several different things. So they're going to collect data, they're going to make graphs, they're going to compare graphs. There's lots of questions in these activities. And notice that there's a place for, this is a text sticky, there's a place for questions and a place for answers. And so this is what I also really like about Classpad.net, is that I can basically have everything in one place. I can have graphs and tables and text and places for students to write their answers, so that everything is all right there together. And I can move things around so that it doesn't look so cluttered. Go to my spaces right here, so you can make your paper look the way you want it to look, and students can write their answers. Everything is right there in the one place. So now as we scroll down, you have unlimited ability to add things. So as we scroll down, here are the whole point of this activity that I chose this one to show you is, here's the data, here's the graphs, and what we like to have students do is, what happens if you change the data? What if you have outliers? Like right now we have this box and whisker plot with outliers. Well, there don't really seem to be any outliers. So the directions are add some numbers or delete some numbers and see what happens to your graphs and to your data. How does that impact it? So let's say I added another bag, and I'm just making up a number here because that's what we want them to do. We want them to add something extreme. So let's say the bag had a hole in it, so when I counted it, it only had 14. What does that do to my graphs? And because everything is connected, making a change in one place makes everything change. So when I hit this enter, you're going to see my, slowly but surely, there we go. And that's a drastic change, right? And notice that in the box plot, I have identify the outliers. Well, what happens if I hit ignore the outlier? Because that is clearly an outlying point, right? Doesn't make sense. So now it's going to ignore it, and make that whisker really long. So which is better? Is it better to identify the outlier, or is it better to ignore it? Well, obviously in this case, we want to identify it because it's a point that doesn't really make sense. It's kind of out of the norm of the rest. And they can see that immediately in the histogram, this point over here, how does that totally impacted all of the things here. So what if we had another number, let's say, it's really not liking me right now. I was just going to change it to something bigger. What would that? Okay, so let's change it to something, I don't know, 70. Maybe I got really lucky with my M&Ms. So what's that going to do to all of my data? So this is a nice activity just to show you that in Classpad, everything is connected. So if you make a change, you're going to see the change show up in other things. And you can really have some great discussions about, what do outliers do? What if I add, some more lower numbers? How does that impact the mean and the median and those types of things? So really nice way to explore very quickly changes on your statistical measures. All right. I want to get into my next activity here. Fingers crossed. That is not it. Okay. I did want to show you some other statistical. I wanted to show you some regression just before I go, and I'm sitting here watching my time, so I know that I'm going to run out of time as I always do. So this is an activity, and again, I'll share it if you want to just look at it on your own. But this is just to give you an example of how, I don't know why it keeps doing that.
Aaron, it's probably better to just share the PDF at the end, because the first two links you sent over,
they don't work.
Are actually, yeah, they're actually not the statistics ones. They were like transformations.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Which is weird. So I think it's just better. We'll share the PDF at the end. And then I told everyone we also share it in a follow-up email.
Yes, yes.
So.
All right. I'll go back to where I was. I forgot where I was. There it is. All right. So this activity, notice, is different because it's using two variables, right? So we have, this is a information about a Facebook user. So notice it's only data from 2004 to 2009, and there's a reason for that. And so the first thing they're asked to do is to actually, is there a relationship? So this one's going to go into two variables. So if you want to plot a scatter plot, you're going to need to select two columns. And so when we go to graph, this time we're going to do a scatter plot. And so the first thing they're asked is there a relationship? Do they see a relationship between the years of Facebook and the number of users in the millions, right? So it does look like, the first couple of years before people realized what Facebook was, it was kind of a slow build, but all of a sudden we're getting, much faster. Growth is really fast. And so then they're asked to try and fit a function to that. And so they could do this by hand, obviously depends where you are, but I wanted to show you how you can use the statistics menu to do the regression very quickly. So again, you hit the two columns, and when you go back, you go into regression. And you'll notice you have lots and lots of choices here. So, you want students looking and what relationship does this look like? And I would say, well, actually, let me throw it out to you guys. What do you think? What kind of regression do you think that we should do? Though, if you look at the title, I kind of gave it to you. I'm not seeing any answers. All right, well, I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to go exponential. So what happens is, and let's move the sticky, I now have this exponential graph, and, here's the, regression and all that, it's all right here for me. So using the statistics menu, I get the regression right here. As they scroll down in this activity, it talks about the model, why was that a good model, and now can you predict what will happen in the year, where is it, 2025? Like how many millions of users will there be in the year 2025? So that's what they're supposed to do. And so then how do they use that equation to help them make that answer? And so then they can, and I want to point out, so I used statistics to create this graph, and it's now a graph grid. And so you'll notice down here that now I have an ability to actually type in a function. So when I click that, I get a function. So now they would put in there a function here, and let's see if I can actually do this. Y equals, let's do 0.0. I'm looking at the A, if you're wondering what I'm doing. I'm not going to use,
Didn't quite look like numbers.
I was going to say, that doesn't look right. And I'm not going to, I probably should type the whole thing, but I'm not going to. And so when I have to get my E, there's my E. So notice the template comes up, and I'm going to go into math, and I have an E value right there. And then I want to raise it, so I'm going to go into number, and here's my exponential. Or if I'm on like my laptop right now, I could use the, what do we call that? The caret button as well if I want, but we'll just do that. So now B is 1.588. and times x, right? And hopefully it's probably not going to be exactly on top. That's pretty good on top. And so now how could they calculate? So we could evaluate, we could get the calculator sticky up and actually evaluate that function for the year 2025, right? So let's see if I can copy and paste this. So this is the calculate sticky. So what I'm trying to show you is how everything is all in one place. I don't have to go to a different tool. I'm doing calculations, I'm doing graphing, I'm doing statistics, I'm doing regressions, I'm doing lots of different things. So let's replace this with, what was the year,
2025.
Let's see what our solution is. Numeric overflow. So that's not a good example.
Well, wouldn't you need to use the number 25 instead because you took off the 20s?
You're right. Duh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So notice it gives it in scientific notation, which is kind of cool. So that's a lot, right? What is that number? 5, really large. So
very, very large.
Very, very large. I don't even know how to say it. So they're doing these predictions, right? So in this first part of the activity, they're doing the regression, the statistics, they're doing a prediction. And then as we scroll down, they are actually then given the information for a couple more years and to see how good their predictions were. So it's a kind of a cool little activity. So maybe instead of 2025, you say 2019 and see how close they get to the actual number over here, which is in millions. So just a nice little activity to show you how the statistics menu also lets you do regressions and things like that. So the last thing I wanted to show you, and because I don't think I'm going to get to everything, is there are also the ability to do simulations with Classpad.net. So I know that when I was teaching middle and high school, one of my favorite things to do was to get a bag of Starburst, the ones that are wrapped, and do that, talk about how, when in the parks and stuff, they tag animals. And the reason they do that is to get a count of how many of those animals are in the wild, right? But they're not actually counting, say if they're doing tigers, they're not actually counting every tiger. They're tagging, 5 of them, putting them back, and then catching them and counting how many they caught are tagged and doing ratios and proportions and samples. So this activity is a really nice one because it is talking about, what's the point, like statistic, we're doing sampling and how many samples are going to help us get a better estimate of the population. And so this is a simulation. So I just wanted to show you that you have the ability in Classpad to do things like simulations. So this is using a picture. It's on the graphing grid. So you can tell that because of this f of x. So this is the graphing sticky that has an image in it. And then we graphed a circle with a shaded region, and this is now controlled by a slider. So this is a kind of a fun activity because they're going to collect data from a simulation. So the idea is you've tagged a number of fish. 15 fish were caught, they got tagged, they're thrown back into the pond or the lake or whatever it is, and we're trying to estimate how many total fish are in this lake. And so we're going to do several different catching and releasing them back. So this basically controls the net. So the sliders control the movement of the net. So if I want to, and what I want you to notice is if you look down underneath where it says fish, MC, currently my last catch, I had 3 out of 69 with tags. So now I'm gonna move the net and do another catch. And so this is the data I'm collecting. So now I have 8 out of 31 caught that had tags. And so they're going to collect a lot of different data, right? So they can do this several times. Let's say you tell them, I want you to do 10 catches, move the net 10 times, record your 10 data. So every student, if they're doing this, is going to have different numbers, right? So once they have their data, then they're going to calculate the ratios and percent. So I'm only going to do a couple more just because I'm looking at my time here. So 4 out of 147. What I wanted to also show you is, notice, so Classpad has the ability to use multi-character variables. So that's basically what these labels are. This is, instead of an X, it's marked. Instead of a Y, it's caught, that type of thing. So because everything is connected, let's say I've collected, you know, a lot more than I have here. I can now use these labels to do calculations and fill in my table based on that because of the connection. So what I'd like to, I'm just going to demonstrate real quick. So the ratio is the number of marked to caught. So I'm going to, is that right? Pull up my calculate sticky. And instead of 8 divided by 31, I'm going to do ratio. I'm going to define ratio in general. So notice I'm matching it exactly to the way I've written the word here. So capitals matter. And I'm going to use this button right here, which is called the define button. So it's defining this ratio to be something all the time. And I'm going to use the labels instead of the numbers, because if I use the labels instead of the numbers, then it will do it for all of them. It'd be a lot more dramatic if I had more numbers, but we'll just try it. So I'm going to do marked, and I'm just hitting the backward slash, which makes my fraction here, over caught. So that's what I'm defining ratio to be. So watch what happens. They are connected. It answers it. It makes a list in the calculate sticky for me, but it fills in the table. So this is a really nice way to get, you know, if you collect data and you're going to do some calculations with it, use labels up here and define them, and it will fill in the rest of your table. So it's kind of a really nice connection. So I could do the same thing here for percent. So percent, I'm going to define it, and it's the ratio, right, times 100. Times times 100. All right. And so it's going to fill them in there for me too. So I wanted to make sure that I showed you that. So the statistics, you can do a lot of things just with the labels and calculations, so you can really make all this work. And now you can start graphing your relationships and seeing the marks to caught, those types of things, and making estimates of how many you think are in there, finding the statistical measures. So I had more to share, but I obviously am going to run out of time. So I wanted to stop and just check, make sure there's no questions, because I wanted to end with showing you some other ways to do some simulations if we had time. But I want to make sure there's no questions before I move on.
I don't see any questions coming up.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to, actually, I am not logged in, but I'm going to go back to Classpad. I'm going to go back and just go into Start Exploring again, so I get a blank screen. When you're assigned into your account, you can, which I probably should do. Let me just show you that, just so you can see the difference. For those of you not used to this, this is the guest. Up here, all you can do is just work and work, but then it won't save anything. If you want to save or create an account, you want to make sure that you're going into login or register. I'm going to log in. Oh, no, it's not going to let me. Leave. It doesn't like to remember me. There we go. I'm going to log in up here because it remembers me when I go in that way. I just want to show you the difference when you're logged in. So there we go. So when you're logged in, you're going to see immediately a difference. There's this little cloud right here, and this means I have an account and everything I'm doing is auto-saving. So that is the beautiful thing about when you're working, you don't have to remember to save. It's auto-saving everything that you do. And just so you know, this paper stack also comes up when you have an account, and that means that's where all of your stuff lives. I'll just let you look at it real quick. We have previous recorded webinars that talk about all of this, like how to create the folders, how to save your papers, how to share them. But this is basically the papers and the folders that I've been working on. So these are all my papers. I have 149 right now. So because I'm in my account, I can create a new paper. If you're just a guest, you can't create new papers. So I'm going to create a new paper, and what I want to end with is how can you use Classpad to do, simulations. So let's say one of the things when you are working with statistics and probability is you have students, collecting samples, right? So tossing coins is a typical one to start with, heads or tails, rolling dice, adding the sum, what's the probability of getting a 7, those types of things. And a lot of times you don't actually have the physical tools to let the students collect the data. So you could use Classpad.net as a simulation. And to do that, I'm going to start with the coin. You're going to go into the calculator, and you're going to be using the random, let me make sure I'm doing this right. So notice when I type in, again, functions come up the minute you start typing some words because there's some functions. If you want to know where all the functions list, there's this function list right here. We'll tell you how to use all the functions. There's lots and lots of them. But I'm interested in random list. And I'm doing coin. So what is a coin? A coin is heads or tails, right? So I'm going to assign, so maybe I get a text sticky out here, and I'm going to assign heads to be 0 and tails to be 1, right? Since I don't have an actual coin, I'm using a simulation here. So in my random list, how many times do I want to toss it? So maybe I want to toss it 10 times. So that's the first thing I'm going to put in my list. And then I'm going to define what's my range. Well, my range is 0 to 1, right? So I'm going to toss the coin 10 times, and it's going to randomly, that's what random means, give me back a 0 or a 1. That's all I'm giving it. So when I hit enter, what I get is a list, 0, 1, 0, 1. And so this is my random toss. And then I could count that. So is that, what is the probability of getting heads or tails? Well, it's supposed to be 50%. Does that look like 50%? Well, let's actually name our list. So let's name our list coin and define it to be random list 10, 0, 1. All right. So it's going to give me, notice it's a different random list. And let's pull up a table. So what I'm trying to show you is how you can do this simulation and still do all the statistics. So if I get out a table, remember everything is connected. So I defined coin to be this list. So I'm going to type coin here, and it's going to now fill in the last thing right here. So here's my list, and theoretically, it should be 50%. Well, let's look at a graph of it. And let's do a histogram. And did we get 50-50? Not quite. So maybe I need to do more tosses. So now I could go back up to this list, and instead of 10, let's do 50. And watch what happens. I got a big list here. My table went up to 50 now, and then my histogram also changed. So you can do simulations very quickly and easily with Classpad.net, and everything is connected. So what if I wanted to do the tossing? Ooh, really long list. But what if I wanted to do the tossing of 2 dice, right? So let's define the dice 1 to be, and let's do it 10 times. And we know a dice has the numbers between 1 and 6. So again, the first number is how many times I'm going to toss it, and the second number is or the next 2 numbers of my range. So I have a dice with the numbers between 1 and 6. So when I hit enter, it's going to give me, oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot
We're missing the rand.
I forgot to put random. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thinking ahead of myself. And then let's do dice 2. Same exact thing, really. 10, 1, 6. And now I can make my table because, again, everything is connected. So let's do dice 1, dice 2. And what do we really care about? Well, how many times, let's think about, playing craps. How many times am I getting 7? If you do theoretically, 7 should appear the most, right? But if you look at my 10 rolls, how often does 7 occur? So what do we need here? I need to know what the total is together. So let's go over here and define total. And total is dice 1 plus dice 2. So did I get 7 to show up more than the others? Sure doesn't look like it. So maybe I have to do a lot more tossing, rolling of the dice to get the theoretical probability to match up. So it's just a nice way you can really use Classpad.net to do simulations. And because of the interconnectedness, you can be doing the calculations, but then it appears in the statistics that you can then quickly make a graph and a plot and see the changes. So I know this is really fast, and there's so much to cover, and I get so excited about it, but I am finished for now, and I will share that paper with you so that you have that. I'm going to throw the paper into the document right now, into the
chat panel.
Chat panel. And
So
if you don't, I'll give you some minutes, and we're going to close the webinar, but if you want to download, there it is. Take some time to download that. If you don't get it before I shut the webinar off, it will show up in an email follow-up tomorrow where I'll have the recorded link to the recording of this webinar as well. So I am finished as far as that. So if there's any questions, now would be the time to ask.
We had a question pop up. Is it possible to type in, define what you want, for example, column C to be in the column itself? Yeah.
Not right now. They are still working on making this more of a true kind of spreadsheet, but right now, no. So that's why I was trying to show you the calculation is where we would do that.
Right.
Define it. Eventually, that is the goal, but that it just hasn't been developed yet. It's getting there.
Okay. Yeah. Good question.
All right. I'm going to attempt to share back with the PowerPoint that has a ton of links, which again, if you miss them, we will show you all the links there, but let's see if I can find my PowerPoint. That's always a question. There we go. Oh, wow. So there's all the links.
Yeah, so this is just a few things, if you want to start following us on social media, this is the way to find us. We post on our social media sites all the different, we'll post a lot of activities up there, but also additional information on all the other webinars we will be doing. We have a webinar basically once a week, every Thursday at the same time. So we'd love for you guys to join us. Sometimes it'll be on Classpad.net. Other times it'll be on our graphing calculators or our scientific calculators, the actual hardware that you've used in your classrooms before. And so you just, take a look on our social media sites for all of that information. And also, if you go to CasioEducation.com/remote-learning, it'll take you to a lot of some of the other free things that we are offering at this time.
And there's lots and lots of free Classpad activities, both on our website, and then if you create the account, you can search in the public papers, and there's hundreds of them in there. More being added all the time from other users and from us as well.
Yeah, and we post, like we mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be put up on YouTube. We have a specific playlist just for our webinars, so it'll be a little bit easier for you to find all, our previously recorded webinars, but there's also a ton of other webinars, some specifically on the data statistic stuff, some on, graphing and geometry and calculations. So you can also find those there. And we've also separated them into different playlists as well. So I don't know that we have any other questions, but if you do, throw them up in the chat panel real quick. But if not, thank you guys for joining us tonight. We hope you guys are able to learn something new.
And thanks for putting up with my crazy computer stuff. Have a good night, everyone.